In today's video, I'm going to take you through some exercises for airbrushing. Now, these will help you out in the long run with your artwork. This is a good practice exercise for a beginner. Learning these two tasks will help you out in the long run, guys. When you come across to your artwork, you will use these two exercises in a lot of your artwork. So the first thing we're going to do is dots. It's nice and simple. I know it's boring, but learning this and the way I show it here on these grids will help you so much. One, for accuracy. When moving in with the airbrush, you'll know where to go in and get pinpoint accuracy on your piece of artwork. So we're going to be doing dots. And the next one, it's like being at school, we've got lines. Usually you get detention when you get lines. So we're doing lines. Now, these two pieces, as I say, will help you out in the long run when you're airbrushing your pieces of artwork when you're a beginner. And it's a real good one to learn these. I always go back to this. One for the dots with the accuracy and learning distance and things like that. And lines just sharpens up your skill with the trigger. So basically you're learning a couple of exercises and you're getting a bit of trigger control down in this video today. So nice and simple. You don't need a fancy airbrush for this or paint. Airbrush paint is advised as it's reduced and thinned. It will help you out when you spray it. So we're going to be using the Creos PS270 for this. This one's got the Mac valve on the front. It's a 0.2. As I say, you don't need a fancy brush. Any airbrush you can do on this. Now, when you do dots, you are basically, with a double action airbrush, you are pushing down for air, and then when you pull back for paint, you create a dot, like so. The more you pull back on the trigger, the bigger the dot. The further away you are from the paper, the bigger the dot and the more misted out the dot will be. So that's how you will do a dot with an airbrush. Now, homing in on your skills for the next piece on the grid, this is why I say this is a good one to practice on. Where you've got the little squares, is to aim and put a dot in the center of the squares. So get your distance with the brush and just aim to hit the center of the squares. And this will just get your accuracy down with the airbrush. So you're just putting a dot in the center of the squares. So practice that on the centers all the way down. Just do loads and loads of dots. Try different distances. So if you want to fill the whole square up, you know you've got to sort of come to there to fill that square up. If you make smaller squares, you know you've got to go in a little bit closer to create the dot. So once you've done the dots on the centers of the squares, then go to the crosshairs on the squares and aim to hit every crosshair with a dot. And as I say, this will just give you your accuracy with the brush. This helps when you're going on a piece of artwork. If you're doing something detailed and you're going down on a piece of artwork and you need to hit a certain point on that image, you know you can go straight in and you know where you're aiming your brush and where the paint's going to hit first time. So that's the dots. Nice one to practice. Cheap paper, draw yourself some lines out, practice your dots. It does help. Now we're moving on to lines. This is the next one. Now, to create a line with an airbrush, one second, am I allowed to take the crown cap off? They're letting me take the crown cap off. So I'm going to work with the crown cap off. To do lines, you are basically pushing down on the trigger, moving back for paint, and when your paint starts to come out, you start to move with the brush. So you've got a line here and a line here. Now, if you were to move with the brush, when you come to this line here, pull back on the trigger, start to put your paint on at the start of the line. And then when you come through to the end of the line, take your paint off, but keep your air on. So you are rocking the trigger. So you start at this line, you'll bring your paint in, so you're moving back, keep your paint on, and then bring your paint forward, but keep your air on. And if you do this in quite a nice movement, I'll show you. So you're creating that. So you're moving along, you're going paint on, paint off, paint on, paint off, paint on, paint off. And what you'll create, for a start, you'll start getting build-ups. You'll start sort of going, and you'll do a build-up like that, and then you'll get a build-up like that at the end. And what you're aiming for is to get point to point, where you're bringing the paint in. Just as you come into the line, you bring the paint in, it's nice and smooth and tapered off, consistent line, and then when you take it out on the next line, you're bringing that trigger forward nice and slow towards the end of the line, and then you'll get a point. And when you get faster with this and start to move a little bit more fluent, you'll start getting nice, crisp, consistent lines like that on the paper. And then you can start to bring your two end columns in like that and practice bringing these two lines closer together, and this will get your trigger control quicker when you go from point to point, point to point, point to point, and you're aiming to get a faded outline there and a faded start line there. And this one is a main airbrush technique and exercise to learn, guys, for all of your work, because this one will come into every aspect of using an airbrush when you're painting, say, portraits. Anything you do with an airbrush, it's mainly this trigger control movement is the main one to learn. You've got your dots where you'll be going down, back, but lines come in so much when you're doing pieces of artwork for like shading, because your lines then start to become things like this, arcs, and it's that on off, point to point, point to point. You'll see it in a lot of artwork. Every sort of trigger movement you do, these lines come in really handy. So I hope this has helped you out. It's two great exercises to learn, guys, it really is, and it will help you in the long run. Simple pieces of paper, draw yourself some columns, practice your lines, practice your dots, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Yeah, I kept the crown cap on. Yeah, and it was still the right time. I've not gone over. Okay, I took my pills.